So I chose to look into 4 songs by the High Flying Birds and I'll do a listening analysis on a live version and the studio version and compare the differences, because I would like to release my own songs and slightly change it up for the live version. At the minute I'm going to do a sort of a Britpop song, an alternative rock song, or like a pop song, or like and sort of like maybe a country song. And sort of the songs that I've picked out are Ballad of the Mighty Eye, In the Heat of the Moment, Lock All the Doors, and The Death of You and Me. So this is my journal for week 1 of year 2 project 1. So 1st of September was our first day at college, and we went over the project brief, which was what we're going to do in the college, on the course, what it entails, and what we'd need to do, and what sort of our end goal. So we found it split into 4 parts, which are part 1, part 2, part 3, part 4, and then we sort of looked at what we need to do for each part to make it the best we can. Part 1 is sort of the planning stage, which involves like doing research into the sort of your idea of what you want to do, and for the songs you want to release, which links into part 2. It's also a skills audit where you talk about your skills, how you can improve them, and what your overall rating is as a whole. And then part 2 is about more song-based, where we cover a lot of music theory, songwriting, releasing songs, and then you have journals to go alongside it, which is like an ongoing evaluation, which is what I'm doing now. Part 3 is sort of your next steps after college, which is like UCAS, uni, and sort of types of jobs there are in the industry. Personally, I don't think this is necessary because I'm not planning on going to uni and I'm not planning on changing my mind. However, it is something we still have to complete. And then finally, part 4 is sort of an evaluation. So once the project's done, everything, the songs have been released, you evaluate everything. Which I think this is a very good sounding project. I'm quite excited to hear about the project and to do it, so I'm very looking forward to having my own songs released and out there for everyone to hear, because I would say I'm a good songwriter. Yeah, and on the 2nd was our music theory, and on the Monday we have our full session with Mark, where we get more delivery on the industry and UCAS and universities, whereas Ryan, he does the more practical side of things with the music theory, the songwriting and stuff like that. On Tuesday, which is the 2nd of September, we was mainly just recapping music theory that we went over last year, so like chord creation and triads, arpeggios, cadences, and chord progressions and stuff like that. And we're gonna have it was called the music theory roadmap, where we just slowly go more in depth on music theory and stuff like that. And we started by just covering arpeggios and what it is. So an arpeggio is like a chord that's broken down and played in each individual note in a rising or descending order. And they're usually used to add like a extra layer in songs as like a rhythm part, and it just adds a bit more texture and depth to the song part. And then we covered chords, and we started with major and minor triads. The standard major chord uses the root note, the 3rd and the 5th scale degree, and then each chord changes that slightly. So for a minor chord, it uses the root note, the flat 3rd and the fifth. So that third note, technically second note, but the third note in the scale is made a flat, which sort of has that more saddening sound. And then we also looked at inversions, which are the triad but played in different orders, and it can help create smoother changes between chords. And they've all got different orders. So the standard chord is a 1-3-5, whereas the first inversion is a 3-5-1, and the second version is a 5-1-3. So each chord has a different root note, but it's still the same chord. So take it's the chord of C major, that is C, E, and G. But first inversion is E, G, C, and the second inversion is G, C, E. And usually when you write it down on a piece of music, it will come under a slash chord. So a standard chord would be C, and then you'll have, for a first inversion, it would be C/E, because E is now the new root note. And what that tells you is you play the C chord, but have the E as the root note. And then you've got C/G, which is the same, but just the root note's a G. Afterwards, we looked at augmented and diminished chords. A diminished chord is a very sort of weird sounding chord. It's a chord that wants to resolve, and it's mainly used as like a transition to build like tension, which that uses the root note, the flat third, and the flat fifth, which does create a very flat, sort of uneasy, tension building sound. So taking a C major chord, a diminished that would be C, E flat, and G flat, or F sharp, or D sharp. So C, D sharp, F sharp. And then an augmented chord is the root note, the third, and the sharpened fifth. So taking C major again, it'd be C, E, and G sharp. And then we looked into suspended chords. A suspended chord, or a sus chord, as written on music, the major or minor third is replaced with a perfect fourth or major second. However, the four is more commonly used. And these chords are chords that are used to add accents into pieces of, or progressions. A good example of this is a crazy little thing called Love by Queen. It's a D major, but uses a D sus4 and a D sus2 just to add a bit of variation into what would just be a simple D chord. And then finally we looked at add chords, which are triads with an extra note, and they're commonly used in like jazz, R&B, and funk. Most very commonly used one is an add 9 chord. We've got the E add 9. F uses it a lot as well, which is an F add 9. And you just add the 9th scale degree in that chord. So it would be the F triad plus the 9 in the chord. How would I use these in my songs? And how can I apply this? In a lot of my songs I do use I do use a lot of suspended chords, as when I usually play a D chord, there are times where I'll just naturally play a suspended chord, just because that is how Oasis play it, and Oasis being one of my big influences is sort of ingrained into me. And then we looked at famous chord patterns and progressions, which we looked at the 1-4-5, which can be considered the foundations of like rock and roll, modern rock, and pop music. As you can see a lot in the 60s and 70s and trace, and that it goes all the way back to the blues. As if you play the progression in a certain way, you get a 12-bar blues, which has the 1, the 5, then goes back to the 1. Well, no, it's the 1, the 4, then the 1, then the 5, then the 4, then the 1, then 5. And then another one that uses just simply just the 1, 4, 5 is the verse of Green Day's song Good Riddance. And this sort of links to a Ed Sheeran court case where one of his songs he was sued by Marvin Gaye or his record label because Ed Sheeran had supposedly stolen a chord progression. However, in court Ed Sheeran proved with his guitar that you can't copyright chord progression because then you'd run out of stuff to play. And then the next famous chord progression is the 1, 5, 6, 4, which this is a very happy chord progression, which is like in a lot of pop music, and there's an actual explanation as to why it is such a pleasant chord progression. These 4 chords, they're actually opposites of each other. So the 5 is the opposite of the 1, and the 6 is the opposite of the 5, and the 4 is the opposite of the 6, and then the way they contrast against one another is what makes them sound really good. One song that famously uses this is Let It Be by the Beatles, and this is one chord progression that you can find all across music. So it's used by the Beatles, Bob Marley, Justin Bieber, Taylor Swift, The Journey, Train, Adele. There's a lot of people that will use this chord progression as it is a very pleasant chord progression. And then another one we looked at was the 1, 6, 4, 5. This was popular in the 50s, and a popular songs that use this is Stand By Me by Benny King. Yeah. And finally we looked at the 6, 4, 1, 5. This is big. This song begins with a minor chord when playing in the major key, and this progression sounds sad and dark compared to the other ones that we looked at. Africa by Toto uses this, and then we looked at cadences. A cadence is the way a piece of music resolves. As we learned in lesson, the exact phrasing was a cadence in music is a chord progression of at least 2 chords that end in a phrase or section of a piece of music. And there are 2 types. You've got finished and unfinished. Finished cadences are perfect and plagal, and unfinished are imperfect and interrupted. A perfect cadence is when you go from the 5 chord to the 1 chord, and it's one that's regarded as the most finished. A plagal cadence, which goes from the 4 to the 1, and it is often referenced or referred to as the Amen cadence, because the word Amen is set at the end of many traditional hymns, and it sort of ends like that. And then onto the unfinished cadences, you've got the imperfect cadence, which an imperfect cadence or half cadence end on a 5 chord, and it can start on a 1, 2 or 4 chord. And finally, an interrupted cadence is a cadence or deceptive cadence ends on an unexpected chord, the music sounds like it has been interrupted, where you feel like you're expecting to hear a nice chord, but you hear something else, which sort of adds that feeling. Cadences, I tend to use a finished cadence as I like that sort of fleshed out sound more and how it all flows together really seamlessly. So one of my songs I've used I think it's a plagal cadence, which gets onto the task we do at the end of this lesson, which we have multiple tasks. So for singers and drummers, we're to create 2 vocal melodies using the major scale and one using the natural minor scale. Guitar players, which is the one I did, was to create 2 chord progressions ending in a cadence of your choice, and 1 chord progression must use at least 2 inversion chords. Piano players are the same, but have to have an accompanying melody with a major or minor scale. And finally, bass players create 2 riffs using the major minor scale using the natural minor scale, same as the singers. As a guitar player, I chose to do the guitar one, and I created 2 chord progressions using cadences of my choice, which I sort of reversed engineered a couple of my own songs and found out what cadences there were, and that's what I've used finished cadences because I do like the way it sounds. And you can see this in one of my videos, which are under part 2 of the project. On Thursday, so we're in Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, which was the 3rd of September, I started research for part 1. And I chose to look into Noel Gallagher's High Flying Birds because that is one of my main influences. And I thought, I'm not going to do Oasis. I have mentioned Oasis a lot within last year of the college. And my idea for this is to pick 4 songs by Noel Gallagher and the High Flying